Samiksha, and its Prime Minister has tweeted about it, and he has written it on the platform Yomiuri Online. And if I could just give viewers a glimpse of what it says, it essentially, kind of brings in his memories of his interaction with the Japanese since his days as Chief Minister of Gujarat, the development partnership that exists, the fact that Japan has been a preferred special partner of Vibrant Gujarat Summits since their inception. And then, of course, he goes on to narrate the historical, cultural relationship that has existed between the two sides from the days of Swami Vivekananda and Rabindranath Tagore and Justice Radha Binod Pal. And then, of course, the post-independence development relationship and economic partnership that has existed, a showcase example of which is the upcoming bullet train that is coming up in India between Ahmedabad and Mumbai, as Ambassador Sanjay Verma, beg pardon, had mentioned to us yesterday also that the bullet train would be completed by 2026-27. So Prime Minister there essentially then narrating the significance of the two democracies as partners in Indo-Pacific, both India and Japan acting as very strong pillars of Quad to make sure that there is a rules-based international order, that there is a paradigm which respects rules in sea lanes, trade and other aspects of engagements that exist between various nations. So Prime Minister has in fact delved quite in detail about the security element within Quad, and that is something which I found interesting, Samiksha, while talking about Quad. And remember, generally it is believed that India does not want a security aspect to come in Quad, but the fact that Prime Minister has dedicated almost a para on security element within Quad, I think that underscores that India has no inhibitions of understanding that Quad, which began essentially as a Quad security dialogue, will at some stage have that element of defense cooperation as well. So I think that's my takeaway so far as Prime Minister's op-ed is concerned. There is, of course, he mentioned that Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who visited for the annual summit, who visited India in March this year itself, and the kind of understandings and the deepening and broadening of India-Japan special strategic and global partnership that was conceptualized and the cooperation that was conceptualized for the post-COVID world. I think Prime Minister there mentioning that when he meets Prime Minister Kishida later tomorrow, he would be taking it to the next level in terms of the understanding that was reached between the two leaders in March in New Delhi. So that's how the op-ed goes, Samiksha, as I mentioned, the Prime Minister beginning with the historical context and bringing it to the present, looking ahead to the future.
Well, absolutely, Abhishek. And you know, it's been 70 years of diplomatic ties between the two countries. Talk to us about the kind of investment we've seen and the kind of relations between the two countries, particularly the investment of Japan in India.
Well, yes, that itself is a very important aspect of the relationship, because remember, of all the hundreds of corporations that exist, Japanese corporations that exist and do business in India, we have seen from the days of how Suzuki Motor Corporation has really meant mobility and freedom for the middle classes across our country, and many other Japanese corporations working in close tandem with private sector in India to bring in the latest in terms of technology, latest in terms of business practices. We have seen how SoftBank, for example, is an investor in hundreds of startups and established private sector companies in India, and how the two-way partnership that exists between the two sides. A benchmark was sort of set in March when Prime Minister Kishida visited New Delhi, and the two leaders set 5 trillion yen as a figure which should be reached in terms of Indian and Japanese trade investments or Japan's investment in India. So I think that's going to be a very important aspect so far as the bilateral component of this visit is concerned. But as I said, Prime Minister is of course is going to have a bilateral with President Joe Biden tomorrow. Prime Minister is going to have a bilateral with the newly elected Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and then the Quad, the big one, of course. So very important visit lined up, and Republic Network is going to bring you all details right from here, where Prime Minister is closeted now, and then of course at all the other places that he visits for the IPEF, for the Quad, for the bilaterals. All the details here on Republic Media Network. Samiksha.
Well, absolutely, Abhishek, and like you were talking about the investment of Japan, we understand that Prime Minister will hold talks with 30 Japanese CEOs. So if you could tell us more about the kind of deals we are looking at, the investments that are probably in the pipeline.
Well, so this is not more like an investment summit, but more investors and those corporations that are already engaging with India. They're meeting the Prime Minister. He does that whenever he travels. He prefers not to, spend a single minute not working, and that's why you would see it's chock-a-block. He has come just about an hour and a half or 2 hours back. He's closeted with his officials already, and then after the briefings are over, he immediately starts those one-on-one meetings, 4 lined up with the Suzuki Motor Corporation, with the SoftBank Group, with the Uniqlo Group, and with NEC Limited. These are all big corporations of Japan, and they have substantial investments and existing partnerships with some Indian counterparts back there, back at home. So Prime Minister, after he finishes that, he goes for the IPEF, which is another very important aspect of Quad, another platform within Quad which is getting created or formally announced today, which is Indo-Pacific Economic Forum. It's a brainchild of President Joe Biden. The Americans have shared some details with India, and I think the Indian side is principally in agreement with it. That's why Prime Minister would be participating in the formal announcement of IPEF, which would be looking at, it's not a free trade area per se, but it does create a platform where all the nations that would be joining IPEF as a larger extension of Quad, so sort of a Quad plus, specific to economic issues and trade cooperation. So the Prime Minister would be going there, and then he comes back again. And then the business meeting that happens with the 30-odd corporate heads of Japan, essentially aimed at bringing better understanding of government policies, of Modi government's push by way of Atmanirbhar Bharat, how they can collaborate and contribute by way of all the PLI schemes that were launched by the Modi government as part of the post-COVID economic push, and even other changes that have been made recently to make sure that the economic shock that the global economy is facing, the damage of that is limited to India. So I think Prime Minister there on a communication outreach with all the stakeholders, the business community being one of them. Let's look at some of the ground reports that I have filed and then come back.